द वे फॉरवर्ड इज ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਯੂਐਸ ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਦੀ ਕਿ ਜਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਦੀ ਜਾਂ ਕਿਸੇ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਪਿੱਛੇ ਕੋਈ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਉਸ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਲਈ ਉਸ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਹੈ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਬਾਈਡਨ ਹੈਗੇ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਇਹ ਗੱਲ ਕਹੀ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਯੂਐਸ ਦੀ ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਫੰਡਾਮੈਂਟਲੀ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਸਾਡੇ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਵਿਗੜੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੇ ਅੰਡਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਐਲਾਈਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਔਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਫਰੈਂਡਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਰੀਸੈਟ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਇੱਕ ਗਲੋਬਲ ਲੀਡਰਸ਼ਿਪ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੁਬਾਰਾ ਉਸ ਪੋਜੀਸ਼ਨ ਤੇ ਪਹੁੰਚਾਂਗੇ ਇਹ ਇੱਕ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਟਰੰਪ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦਾ ਲੀਡਰ ਬਣਨ ਦੀ ਕੋਈ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਇੰਟਰਨਲ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਦੇਖੀਏ ਇੰਟਰਨਲ ਆਪਣੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਟਰਵੀਨ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਨਹੀਂ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਜੋ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਇਸ ਲਈ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਮੰਤਰਿਤ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਜੀਓ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਫਾਰਮਰ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਜੀ ਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਹੌਫਸਟਰ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੀਓ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਐਜ਼ ਵੀ ਸੈਡ ਫਾਰਮਰ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਰਹਿ ਚੁੱਕੇ ਹਨ ਔਰ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੈਂਟਲੀ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਰ ਹੈਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਪ੍ਰਾਈਵੇਟ ਇਕੁਇਟੀ ਫੰਡ ਦੇ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ
ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ
ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਅੱਜ ਫਿਰ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲਈ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਤੋਂ ਇਹ ਜਾਣਨਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟਸ ਦੀ ਕੀ ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਬਾਈਡਨ ਦੀ ਕੀ ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਬਟ ਦ ਫਰਸਟ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਇਜ਼ ਇਟ ਇਜ਼ ਆਫਨ ਸੈਡ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਯੂਐਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਪਾਰਟੀ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ ਹਾਊ ਟਰੂ ਇਜ਼ ਦੈਟ
See, it's a very big, long question which can take a few days to explain. Where to start and where to end will also take a very long time. We can do a lot of shows on this.
Gee.
US, if we understand correctly, is one of the most flexible countries in the world.
Acha ji.
In concerns to the foreign policies, their relationship with other countries. And it's been a country which has been very flexible and very malleable in changing their stance very quickly towards a nation or towards a group of nations or a continent.
Gee.
And if we go by examples, if I give you all the examples, it will be very clear that how quick we change. And the two presidents you just named, the one in power today and the one before that, you see there's a drastic shift and a drastic change just within a few months.
Gee.
It didn't take much long for them want to be closing the country in and breaking all the trading blocks we had relations with for trade, for migration, for movement of funds to environment. And then President Biden comes and he says, no, we are going back to where we were, establishing all relationships with all the trading blocks, with all of EU, with all of what we call as the Glasgow summit that happened on climate. So it was an immediate change. Without much of a hoopla or hiss and biss, it was just done.
Gee.
And the government and the bureaucracy completely supported the new president. That was not a political issue. We are with him and we are not with him. And so it's been very professional, the way US has dealt with its relationships with the president and the foreign policies of ours with other nations and continents.
Gee.
Having said that, if you look back, our relationships, how at one point we were a closed country, what we called as the Monroe's Doctrine. that we only were looking inward, that we thought we have to develop ourselves first, and then we can open our borders and look outside. And then, of course, we also had the blue water strategy that we had taken from the Canadians, which they did not use. It was in theory with them, because we had Atlantic and the Pacific was on two sides, and we were very well safeguarded by the two oceans. The only thing we had to worry about was Canada and Mexico. And of course, as we see, they are not a threat to us, looking at their defense expenditures. And they listen to us, and they have good relations with both the sides. So our foreign policy has always been very open in comparison with all other countries of the world. Who do we compare ourselves with? What do we know of countries of Western Europe, where most of the migrants want to come in? Or we come from the subcontinent of India. We are from India. We see all countries around India want to migrate into India for work reasons. We have seen that. And we do not see anybody from a neighboring country come in and take a very high position in the government or in the private sector, as we do that in the US. So it seems like we have something going right for our foreign policy, where migrants are coming in, their capital is coming in, and relationships are good. That's where they need and they look forward to come to the US rather than a pull factor.
जी मनदीप जी ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਬਾਰੇ ਹੋਰ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਔਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਡਾਊਨ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਊਅਰਸ ਲਈ ਕਿ ਇਹ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਕੀ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀਜ਼ ਕੀ ਹੈਗੀਆਂ, ਬਟ ਬਿਫੋਰ ਦੈਟ ਮੈਂ ਇਹ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਚਾਹਾਂਗਾ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਹੈਵ ਸੀਨ ਇਨ ਦਿਸ ਕੰਟਰੀ, as you said, ਜਦ ਆਪਾਂ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਹੋਇਆ ਉਹ 1776 ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਫੇਮਸ ਸਪੀਚ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਜਾਰਜ ਵਾਸ਼ਿੰਗਟਨ ਦੀ, ਪਹਿਲੇ ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਦੀ, ਕਿ we should not meddle into the affairs of the world. ਰਾਈਟ, ਸਾਰੀ ਜਗ੍ਹਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਲੱਤ ਨਾ ਅੜਾਈਏ, ਜਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਯੂਰਪ ਆਪਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਲੜਦਾ ਰਹਿੰਦਾ, ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਈਡ ਤੇ ਹੈਗੇ ਹਾਂ. There was kind of an isolationist policy which we understand changed maybe after the First World War under Wilson, who said कि ਅਸੀਂ different countries ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਅਗਰ ਆਪਣੀ democracy ਨੂੰ spread ਕਰੀਏ, that would be good for our stability and the global stability. Right? ਅਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਸੈਕੰਡ ਵਰਲਡ ਵਾਰ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹ ਡਿਵੈਲਪਮੈਂਟ ਹੋਰ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਗਏ, ਬਟ ਵਿਦ ਇਨ ਦ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਇਹ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਗਿਆ ਕਿ ਡਿਊਰਿੰਗ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੋਲਡ ਵਾਰ ਦਾ ਐਰਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਉਸ ਵੇਲੇ ਮੋਰ ਔਰ ਲੈਸ ਇੱਕ ਕੰਸੈਂਸਸ ਸੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਈਜ਼ੀਲੀ ਆਈਡੈਂਟੀਫਾਈਬਲ ਐਨਿਮੀ ਸੀ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਵਿੱਚ, ਸਾਰੀ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਇੱਕ ਪਾਸੇ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ. ਸੋ ਦੇयर ਵਾਸ ਕੰਸੈਂਸਸ ਵਿਦ ਇਨ ਦ ਪਾਰਟੀਜ਼, ਵਿਦ ਇਨ ਦ ਪੀਪਲ, ਮੋਰ ਔਰ ਲੈਸ. ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸਿਸ ਹਮੇਸ਼ਾ ਰਹੇ, ਬਟ recently ਇੱਕ Pew Research Center ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਈ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਇੰਨੀ ਡਰੈਸਟਿਕਲੀ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਲੱਗਦੀ ਹੈ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਤੇ. ਮਤਲਬ I have some numbers ਕਿ ਬਈ US ਦੇ ਅਲਾਈਜ਼ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੀ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ. ਪਾਰਟੀ ਲਾਈਨ ਤੇ ਇਹ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸਿਸ ਐਂਡ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੈਟਸ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਅੱਛੇ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ. More than 70% say ਕਿ ਵੀ ਰਿਲੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੋਣੇ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ. Republicans around 40% say ਕਿ we don't care. We don't want those relations, right? Military spending, as we can imagine, huge difference again, double, 70 to 34% in favor of Republicans. Refugees the nal ki sadi country da attitude hona chahiye. Again, huge differences. 11% Republicans in support, more than 40% Democrats in support. Climate change ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ, ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੀ ਚੀਜ਼ਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸਸ ਜਿਹੜੇ in the last 20-25 years ਇਹ ਸਾਹਮਣੇ ਆਏ. Within the polity also, ਅਸੀਂ ਸੁਣਦੇ ਹਾਂ neocons and protectionists and internationalists. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਇਹ ਬ੍ਰੇਕਅਪ ਕਰ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ? Can we ask you ਕਿ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਦੱਸੋ ਕਿ what are the different ideologies which lead the foreign policy? If we use the word neoconservatism, what is that? What is neoconservatism?
Neoconservatism is very simple. They're generally called as the hawks. They are more about war. कि लड़ाई है किसी तरह. And conflicts are very important to them. But before that, talking about the difference between Republicans and Democrats. Because ਇਹ ਬੜੀ ਸਿੱਧੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੈ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਐਕਸਪੋਜ਼ਰ ਕਿਹਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹੋ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ? Who are you meeting?
ਜੀ.
If you look at California, if you look at New York, if you look at Illinois, and the East Coast and the West Coast, mostly they're all Democrats.
Ji.
They jit jande ne. And these are the states that are running the more or less US economy. Sara trade inna de kol hai. And these are the ones who interact with other countries for trade.
ਅੱਛਾ ਜੀ.
ਜਿੱਥੇ ਸਾਡਾ ਪੈਸਾ ਬਣਦਾ ਹੈ, ਪੈਸਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਪਣਾ ਸਮਾਨ ਦਿੰਦੇ ਆ, ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ. So their exposure is very different.
ਜੀ.
And when ਤੁਸੀਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਦੇ ਹੋ, ਕੋਈ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ, ਕੋਈ ਇੰਨੀ ਕੋਈ ਬੁਰਾਈ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਲੱਗਦੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ you are doing for trade.
ਜੀ.
ਆਪਣਾ ਟ੍ਰੇਡ ਪਾਲ ਰਹੇ ਹੋ. Republicans on the other end are in the center or the interior of the US.
ਜੀ.
ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਇੰਟਰੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਜਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਕੋਲ ਕੋਈ ਵੱਡੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਹੈ ਕੋਈ ਨਹੀਂ. ਮੁਸ਼ਕਲ 2-3 ਵੱਡੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਲੱਭਦੇ ਨੇ. ਮੈਂਫਿਸ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, ਡੈਨਵਰ ਹੋ ਗਿਆ, and then most of the big cities are not there because ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ farming ਤੇ agriculture ਵਿੱਚ ਨੇ. So their job and their relationship is to the land. ਤਾਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੱਗਦਾ ਹੈ ਜੋ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਠੀਕ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ, and ਦੁਨੀਆ ਦਾ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਲੈਣ ਦੇਣ ਹੈ ਨਹੀਂ. So that are right in their own thought process. ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਜਿੱਥੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਹਾਂ ਠੀਕ ਆ, ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਲੈਣਾ ਦੇਣਾ ਨਹੀਂ.
ਜੀ. ਜੀ.
But the US economy, as you and me know, and the rest of the people also know, is California, Illinois, and New York.
ਜੀ.
So that's where we stand today with comparison to Republicans and Democrats.
ਜੀ.
ਇਹ ਕਹਿ ਸਕਦੇ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਠੀਕ ਨੇ.
ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਇਹ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਬੜੀ ਸੋਹਣੀ ਗੱਲ ਦੱਸੀ ਹੈ. ਅਸੀਂ ਇਹ ਕੰਟੀਨਿਊ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ. ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਇਸ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ. ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ. ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ US ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਦੀ ਜੀਓਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ. ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ, ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਦੱਸ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਨੀਓ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵਸ ਦੇ ਬਾਰੇ ਵਿੱਚ. ਨੀਓ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵਸ ਨੂੰ ਵਿਲਸੋਨੀਅਨਸ ਵਿਦ ਗਨਸ ਵੀ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਬਿਲੀਵ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ ਕਿ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਵਿੱਚ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਫੈਲਾਈ ਜਾਏ. The difference is ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੇ strict Wilsonian ਸੀਗੇ, mostly on the Democrat side, they would believe ਕਿ ਬਈ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਫੈਲਾਣੀ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਡਿਪਲੋਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ, ਉਹ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਫੈਲਾਈ ਜਾਏ. ਨੀਓ ਕੰਜ਼ਰਵੇਟਿਵਸ ਥੋੜਾ ਬਾਈ ਫੋਰਸ ਇਸ ਚੀਜ਼ ਨੂੰ ਫੈਲਾਣੇ ਬਿਲੀਵ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਨ. Is that right to say?
This is a very recent trend that came up.
ਜੀ.
ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਲੋਕੀ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਸੀ, but it was not that stretched the way it stretched after 9/11.
ਜੀ.
And Iraq was a very good example. That we got the data and the numbers spoke about how many came from Saudi Arabia, trained in Afghanistan, but our troops landed in Iraq. On the pretext of WMD. And that's the biggest eye-opener for most of the academia or foreign policy experts in the US as well as around the world. Because it's become a very standardized teaching practice now of how US managed or made a mumbo jumbo of the whole situation of all these countries and the threat and extremism and terrorism. All the words were really intermixed or intertwined.
Yeah, jisa kehte hain ki there's no foreign policy, there's only one foreign policy, jiski lathi uski bench. Is that fair?
So after that it continued. It was not just with the Republicans. If you even look at the previous after President Bush came President Obama. Under that also we were in 3 different countries. We were in Libya, we were in Egypt, and we were in Tunisia. But there were very less reasons for us to be there, but we were there.
Gee.
And it was still on the I think it was still the neocons, but it was not Republican or Democrat party lines, but we were there.
Gee.
And the world, again, takes a note of that. We might not, but the world who is also looking at how we take our steps, on what basis do we take our steps, what is our quantification that we look at before going into a country or not going into a country. Do we just engage diplomatically, or do we engage with weapons? Is also a very big question mark that the world looks at us now very carefully. And of course, with Russia playing in the background, sometimes it comes in the front, but it's always trying to be in the background now. And we also see that what happened last week with Kazakhstan, just going off the topic, that they were in Kazakhstan on a day's notice. They came in, quietened down the country, and they are out. Now, that's the first time we have seen a superpower going in that quick. Going in quick is, of course, they're prepared, but they might be prepared because this was going on. But exiting that quickly is an example, as we have not seen before, because anytime a power goes in, it stays there. Last time they went into Afghanistan, they stayed there for almost 10 years. But Kazakhstan was a very quick exit.
Mandeep, when we talk of ideologies and everything, and then something happens which is called reality, right? Or फिर ideology सारी side पे रह जाती है, और ये चीज़ां होती हैं. And how do you read what happened here between Russia and Kazakhstan? Why did they go out in one day?
It was not a complex issue. We are seeing this around the world, but some people have reacted differently than some others. And the Central Asian Republic, as we know, are very rich in resources, minerals, oil, and gas. And of course, they are run very differently because they just got independence. They still are learning to be free. And when they become free, they become more or less like oligarchs. They control a certain sector. When they control a certain sector in a country, they can control the prices. And that's also a very big issue, which doesn't hit the papers or to read, because Kazakhstan was a very simple issue. Prices went up on LPG and gas, and they're one of the big producers. And if you produce something and you're paying higher than the world numbers, of course, there was a protest. And that protest really, as we hear the Prime Minister say, was really supported by the oligarchs who didn't want any foreign intervention and wanted the government to listen to them and keep the prices high. And of course, the population reacted, or they went against this policy. And of course, we saw fires and we saw the arson and tyranny that happened. And Russia was very quick to support the Prime Minister, and the troops came in, cleaned up the act, put everybody back in their homes. There was no rioting after that. And then they exited. They said, you manage your situation now. They acted like a big brother, like a superpower. They didn't just come in and say, no, we are hanging around here and our boots are here. So that's one of the better examples, if need be. I do not know if the Prime Minister or the policies will change, or they're pro-Russia or not. Do they need it? Do they need a change? Of course, we're not getting into that because that's domestic. But as a superpower, this was the first time that we had seen they come in and exit that quickly.
Yeah, again, this again is a central issue in this debate. Many people feel that we have the need to go to other countries, create their institutions, create those democracies so that they are stable. जिस तरह तुसी क्या होने कि oligarchs आए और अपनी मर्जी कर रहे हैं, अगर कोई उत्थे दे systems होन, there might be a check on that, and then they say if good things happen there, bad things won't happen here. That's a foreign policy. That's a more aggressive foreign policy which says कि भाई दूसरी countries से जाओ ਔਰ ਉੱਥੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਭਾਵੇਂ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਇੰਗੇਜ ਕਰੋ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਡਿਪਲੋਮੇਸੀ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਐਕਸਚੇਂਜ ਇੰਗੇਜ ਕਰੋ, ਜਾਂ ਫੋਰਸ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਪਣੀ ਫੇਵਰੇਬਲ, ਭਾਵੇਂ ਉਹ ਡੈਮੋਕ੍ਰੇਸੀ ਨੂੰ ਫੇਵਰੇਬਲ ਹੋਣ ਜਾਂ ਤੁਹਾਡੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਪਣੀ US ਦੀ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਫੇਵਰੇਬਲ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਹੋਣ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਪਿਕ ਕਰੋ. Are we still divided on that thought, or there is some consensus from the last experiences we have had in the last few decades?
See, so far, if you think about promoting democracy around the world, and if you look at the numbers since the First World War, Second World War, and the amount of money and effort we have spent, we haven't get that kind of a return. We don't see that. We have seen ideological changes in South America, for example. In the 1970s, it was very socialist, left-wing, what we may call today. The strong unions. In today's world, we don't see that in Central America or in South America, except for barring a few countries. To the point they became so capitalist that they have financial crisis. It can happen both ways. If you look at Asia,
ਜੀ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ, ਸਮਾਂ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦਾ. ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਲੈਂਦੇ ਆ ਐਂਡ ਵੀਲ ਕੰਟੀਨਿਊ ਔਨ ਦ ਅਦਰ ਸਾਈਡ ਆਫ ਦ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ. ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ. ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਇਜ਼ ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਹਰਜੋਤ ਸਿੰਘ. ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਤੇ ਜਾਣ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਸਾਊਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੀ. ਸਾਊਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਇੱਕ ਬੜਾ ਵੱਡਾ ਟੈਸਟਿੰਗ ਗਰਾਊਂਡ ਰਿਹਾ ਇਨ ਸਾਰੀ ਪਾਲਿਸੀਜ਼ ਦਾ. ਇਟ ਵਾਸ ਅਲੈਜਡ that there was a time ਕਿ foreign governments were making sure ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਉੱਥੇ ਦੀ ਇਕਨੋਮੀਜ਼ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਇੰਨੀ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰੈਸ ਨਾ ਕਰ ਜਾਣ that they adopt a particular system. ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ Guatemala ਵਿੱਚ, Nicaragua ਵਿੱਚ there was a time they were making progress, and some foreign governments like the US, it was alleged, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਇਕਨੋਮੀ ਨੂੰ ਥੱਲੇ ਲਿਆਇਆ ਕਿ ਅਗਰ ਉਹ ਇੰਪਰੂਵ ਕਰਦੇ ਤੇ ਮੇਬੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਸ-ਪਾਸ ਦੀ ਕੰਟਰੀ ਵੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਹਨ ਉਹ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਸਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕੰਟਰੀਜ਼ ਹਨ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਤਰਫ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰੁਝਾਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਵੱਧ ਜਾਏ. Is that fair to say, Mandeep ji?
There was a period where every country around the world was a competitive ground between capitalism and communism. One supported by the USSR, one supported by us. And over a period of time, as we see today, that capitalism really took the step forward. American corporations stepped in. Unions were put on the side. And there have been strong examples that we see from Chile coming out, Argentina coming out, that AT&T really wanted the copper coming out from Chile. We wanted Pinochet to be in power, and he was there. Allende was taken out. And we also had a school here in the US called the School of the Americas in Fort Benning, close to Atlanta. Their job was to just train the troops of South America for our interests, or protect our interests. So we had a very good plan on containing South America and keeping it in our side and theory of containment, rather than to fall on the other side into the hands of the communists, or what we call it, the Russian ideologue. And we see Cuba still stands today with the other ideology, and it's still not progressive as South America has progressed. We did very well, but in today's world and today's economy, we do not know where China stands. We always see it like very pro-capitalists. And looking at their investments in South America, it just seems like it's not based on any ideology, but except that they have the money, they are investing it. If they invest the money, they become dominant buyers of the resources coming out of South America.
So do you see a competition between US, Europe, and China in South America?
Europe is very much on what we call as the food products. Because Europe at one time really used to run, or have the whole colonies of South America under them. It was the Portuguese and the Spaniards.
Gee.
It was just them. And they still have very strong relations.
Gee.
And of course, Italians and Germans are also a part of the mix now. They're very substantial investors in Argentina as well as Brazil. And they have very, I would say, if you look at the treaties between Brazil and Italy, I think they are phenomenal as far as an investor is concerned. But now we also see the Chinese coming in a big way and investing and buying resources and resource land and the ports in South America. So that's the investment now. Of course, investment takes time to bring you a return. So we'll have a few years to see how that plays out. But that's the new country in the mix in South America.
Does Russia still have a role in South America?
They do. We look at Colombia a little bit, Venezuela a little bit, and of course we see how their ideologue is still playing. But it's has a smaller role in the investment policy. They could have a little bigger role on the political ideologue, because in today's world, investments are really driving the countries and the resources and how they import and export.
Mandeep ji, ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਕਿ ਬਾਈਡਨ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਫੋਰਨ ਪਾਲਿਸੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੀ ਚੇਂਜਸ ਇਨ ਪ੍ਰੀਵੀਅਸ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਤੋਂ, ਔਰ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਇੰਪੋਰਟੈਂਟ ਐਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਚੇਂਜ ਦਾ। ਕੀ ਇਨੀਸ਼ੀਏਟਿਵਸ ਦੇਖਦੇ ਹੋ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਨਵੀਂ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ, ਬਾਈਡਨ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ?
See, our current president has really taken the step of a leader, as a leader should. America is a country where we have always stood forward in our own philosophies that we are standing for the good. And good for the planet also becomes our responsibility, because we cannot shy away from saying, or if we don't print enough in the books, that we also happens to be the world's largest polluter. And the definition of polluter is, of course, everybody varies. Somebody says we don't pollute enough, so this is not pollution. Look at India, they pollute more than us. Or China, they pollute more than us. But I think this is not a competitive game. Pollution is pollution. Right? And we live on one planet. It's not running away.
Mandeep ji, ਅਸੀਂ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਇੱਥੇ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਲਾਂਗੇ, ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੀ ਜਿਹੀ ਬ੍ਰੇਕ ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ। ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ ਵਿੱਚ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਮੈਂ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੋਸਟ ਜੁਗ ਸਿੰਘ। ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ, ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਸਾਂ ਪੋਲਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ। ਕਲਾਈਮੇਟ ਕ੍ਰਾਈਸਿਸ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡਾ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਹੈ, ਔਰ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੜੇ ਸਬਸਟੈਂਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸਿਸ ਹੈਗੇ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਕਿਸ ਤਰ੍ਹਾਂ ਉਹ ਹੈਂਡਲ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ। ਕੀ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹ ਰਹੇ ਸੀ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ?
That's what we were talking about. The pollution is an impactful product on our Earth. And all pollution that we say is mostly produced by humans with our industries, plastic, chemicals, batteries, cell phones. Now, junk has become a big issue. It used to be metal before. And being a leader, and we spoke about our president, he wanted to take the lead and control pollution and what we need to do to recycle it. And some people are taking it seriously, but still fingers are being pointed at India and China. They're still the largest producers for pollution in the air. But I think over a period of time, after the Glasgow summit or the Paris Accord, and before that we had the Rio summit, that was the first start of all environmental issues that were brought to the front table of the first world. It's a big topic to be curtailed, but I think so we should have touched a little bit on this, and in the future we should focus more
I think this is
human being responsibility and country's responsibility and USA's responsibility towards cleaning the earth rather than making a mockery out of it.
जी, I think this is a topic ਜਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਫੀ ਡਿਟੇਲ ਵਿੱਚ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ ਲੋੜ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਇੱਕ ਛੋਟੇ ਜਿਹੇ ਸੈਗਮੈਂਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਹੀਂ it's a complete topic in itself and very relevant and very important topic for all of us as human beings as a civilization. ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਜਦ ਅਸੀਂ ਐਡਮਿਨਿਸਟ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨਸ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਟ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਪੋਲਿਟਿਕਸ ਦੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਔਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਕਿਹਾ ਕਿ ਇੱਕ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਦੋਨੋਂ ਨੂੰ ਗਾਈਡ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ਼ੀਏਟ ਕਰਦੀ ਹੈ. Would it be fair to say, looking Republican President Eisenhower ਆਏ ਤੇ ਈਰਾਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ 53 ਵਿੱਚ ਚੇਂਜ ਕਰਤੀ ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਵੀਅਤਨਾਮ ਦੀ ਵਾਰ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਹੈ 54 ਦੇ ਬਾਅਦ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਐਸਕੇਲੇਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ. ਰੇਗਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਸਾਡੇ ਸਾਊਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ 'ਚ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਾਫੀ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਰੋਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਬਾਈ ਫੋਰਸ ਵਾਲਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਐਲੀਮੈਂਟ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਰਿਹਾ. ਸਾਡੇ ਬੁਸ਼ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਨੇ ਇਰਾਕ ਦੀ ਵਾਰ ਸ਼ੁਰੂ ਕੀਤੀ ਤੇ ਕਿਆ ਇਹ ਕਿਹਾ ਜਾ ਸਕਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਰਿਪਬਲਿਕਨ ਸਾਈਡ ਦੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਆਈਡੀਓਲੋਜੀ ਹੈ that is more of using force internationally ਸਾਰੀ ਦੁਨੀਆ ਨੂੰ ਕੰਟਰੋਲ ਕਰਨ ਦੀ by force by some kind of supremacy?
So force, we can bring up examples. When we were in Vietnam, our president at that time was even JFK, and then came Lyndon B. Johnson. But it just depends. You could be a Democrat. It just depends how we look at things. Sometimes it's the foreign policy of the country. And foreign policy is not something that the president decides. It's a very strong think tank and the secretaries and the Department of State and all the research. And then the final decisions are given by the president, who just picks one strategy up depending upon who is supportive. As when we had Bush, we had Dick Cheney, we had Rumsfeld on one side, and we always knew and we always read Colin Powell also always on the other side. And this came out very openly after a while that he was forced to do certain things, and he lost respect a lot in the world that because he came under pressure and he agreed. But that's how it happens in most of the countries. But at least we are a country where we are transparent.
But
we know exactly who's doing what.
Is it fair to say कि ਜਿਹੜੇ Democrats ਹੈਗੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ NAFTA improve ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ build ਕੀਤਾ the things like even TPP, international organizations, UNO and all that stuff for multinational organizations with the same motive of increasing stability, eradication of poverty, and then there's an ideology which attacks and controls for maybe with the same policy in mind, but with a different way of doing it. I always believe our relationships of party presidents are a very thin line. I can give you a good example that in the beginning we had a few US presidents who were Republicans went to India earlier than the Democratic presidents did. And they gave more favor. Like example of Nixon going to China.
And so it's a nice conundrum, but U.S. foreign policy is, again, I would repeat, it stems from very strong research and a lot of other factors that benefits us as well as the other nation. And there are a few examples I can bring up from the Democratic side, which I would say didn't favor India as much, but they favored something else more. But it's a checks and balances they try to do. So U.S. foreign policy is a very carefully chiseled, drafted, thought after. Then they step out.
So we'll again go to the question we started with today, that is it fair to say that it's not just the incumbent president or the administration which controls U.S. foreign policy. There are factors beyond that which control that policy. CIA.
That's the ideologue of the president, absolutely.
Mandeep ji, thank you so much. ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਅੱਜ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਇਸ ਇਸ਼ੂ ਤੇ ਐਜੂਕੇਟ ਕਰਨ ਵਾਸਤੇ. All these issues need to be broken down and addressed individually. ਅਸੀਂ ਫਿਰ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਔਰ ਸਾਊਥ ਅਮਰੀਕਾ ਦੀ ਇਕਨੋਮੀ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਨੈਕਸਟ ਵੀਕ ਇੱਕ ਬੜੇ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿੰਗ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਤੇ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਲੱਗੇ ਆ. ਉਹ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੇਲਾ ਔਰ ਅਸੀਂ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ ਮਨਦੀਪ ਸਿੰਘ ਮਲਹੋਤਰਾ ਜੀ ਨਾਲ. ਆਈ ਹੋਪ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਦੇਖੋ ਔਰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਉਹ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਪਰਲਸ ਆਫ ਵਿਜ਼ਡਮ ਉਹ ਗੇਨ ਕਰੋ. ਮਨਦੀਪ ਜੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਅੱਜ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ੁਕਰੀਆ.
ਸਤਿ ਸ਼੍ਰੀ ਅਕਾਲ। ਥੈਂਕ ਯੂ।
ਇਹ ਸੀ ਸਾਡਾ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਸ਼ੋਅ। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੇਖਦੇ ਰਹੋ ਦ ਵੇ ਫਾਰਵਰਡ।